Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. So, I was thinking today about the fact that they just came out with this Watchmen TV show, and by every account I've looked at, it seems to be absolute garbage. Like, just a complete dumpster fire, an intentional act of arson against one of the major cultural works of the 20th century, right? It's something that takes, and very intentionally takes, the sophistication of the moral arguments that you see in Alan Moore's original comic and turns it into this ridiculous black and white story. I mean, Alan Moore's whole purpose was to try to re-examine the kind of four-color comic concept of reality in a very, very sophisticated way. And these guys instead they decide they actually want a two-color story, in this case literally black and white, and they're going to make it completely moralistic. But their idea, what they call deconstructionism, is really just to make everything the other way around, I guess you say. Not even, because that would imply that originally it was that their argument has some kind of validity. They just want to transform their comic into their show into a propaganda tool. And of course it's all about the bad orange man and all of that, right? So you see this, they take this incredibly sophisticated comic and turn it into a story about heroic black cops fighting evil white supremacists in Oklahoma, where every single white person is racist, of course, because they probably voted for Trump. So it's just horrible. Now, I'm saying all this having done a lot of research about this show, read a lot of articles, seen things that certain people have said. I've seen I forget if it was one of the critics or even one of the creators of the show who suggested that the original Watchmen is fundamentally a white supremacist story or something like that, right? Like, which is just ridiculous. Because Alan Moore is the most leftist person you can imagine. Like, he's a Ravachol-style anarchist, right? He's a guy that would think that Jeremy Corbyn is way too conservative for him, right? So, like, to suggest that The Watchmen is a right-wing comic, right? And, these people are just such idiots. Anyway, I'm saying all this, having done a lot of study about the show, but I am not actually watching the show because, well, first of all, I've made a point of never to watch anything that anyone was ever going to produce about Watchmen again after the original, because, first of all, Alan Moore didn't want people to, and second, because there's absolutely nothing you can possibly do with Watchmen. So far, we've absolutely proven that in every context. There's nothing you can do that is going to make Watchmen better than it is. You're only going to make it worse, right? And in this case, they're doing it intentionally. They're intentionally trying to deconstruct Watchmen into a modern story about race war in America, right? Or something like that. So I'm not going to watch it, in part because of Alan Moore's wishes, but mainly because why would I watch something made by someone who clearly hates the thing I love, who almost certainly hates me, who wishes me harm, and who wants to get money to continue to wish me harm and to continue to work towards destroying everything we value, right? Like, why would you do that? And that's what the subject of this video today is about. And it's partly from there, partly it has to do with a video that a guy named David Stewart put out that was brought to my attention. And it looks from his YouTube channel, David Stewart is not some kind of a bad guy. He's not some progressive type or whatever, right? And he seems to be a sincere gamer type. But he made this video that I've heard a lot of people say a lot of times, which is that it doesn't really matter if D&D is all SJW woke now, right? Their wokeism doesn't matter because I can just play my own game at home, right? So why should I care? And I mean, obviously, it's better for you not to care and not buy the books if you find that they're full of wokeness, than to buy the books even if you don't like wokeness but they're full of wokeness, right? That's still better to just hide out in your house and do nothing, right? To just play old school games. and to just, wait out the clock and hope that they won't come to collect people for the gulag while you're still alive, right? They'll just collect your kids and your grandkids and send them to the gulags, right? But in another more accurate sense, the suggestion that you're going to avoid the repercussions of all this just by by saying, hey, it's perfectly okay, I can just play around it, right? Like, because he actually bought the book. He shows it, or the box set. He's got it in his video, right? He recognizes that the wokeness is a big problem, but then he just says, well, I could just kind of, I can look around the wokeness. I don't have to look at the wokeness, right? But this doesn't change the fundamental mechanics of what's going on and why it's a problem. Because the more you try to not care if it's a problem, the bigger and closer it's going to get to your own face, right? If you're not trying to stop the wokeness now, the SJW infiltration now, it's going to be a lot harder in a short while, right? This is depending, and in part, the great success that the SJWs have had in nerd culture to make these infiltrations and these inroads is that nerds are actually, they think they're really smart and really sophisticated, and they're actually really dumb and have terrible taste, okay? Because nerds are very easily tricked into buying things, right? You just have to, hey, sorry, that's my cat making noise with the bag. You just have to, hey, god damn it, cat, trying to make a video here. All right, so they're nerds are just drawn to the stuff, tropes basically. They don't really care about having a deeper story. They don't care about the message being good. They don't care about it being particularly intelligent. They don't care about it being affirming or being some way harmful. And the proof of this, I know that some of you might be listening to this feeling really mad right now that I'm insulting your people, right? But the proof of this is that you keep buying shit, right? You keep buying garbage, and you keep buying stuff made by people who despise you and who want to do you harm, right? They hate you so much that if they had the power, they would see your skull on a pile of little skulls, of all the people that they consider the bad people that need to go away to save Mother Earth or to bring in the new man or to create the glorious communist revolution or whatever it is they want, right? You're their enemy. And ultimately, they kind of want you dead, right? And you're still throwing money at them to see something that is not what you loved, but in fact is a destruction of everything you once loved, right? The Star Wars movies are not the Star Wars you loved, right? You loved the trilogy, the original trilogy, right? That's what you loved. But now you're paying money so you can hear the words, oh, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, look, Millennium Falcon, oh, there's C-3PO, right? But it's in what amounts to being not even a parody, but a complete mockery of what it originally was, that has been intentionally created for this, right? Rian Johnson said so. His whole goal was to deconstruct Star Wars and to do so in a way that was meant to be a direct attack on the fans of Star Wars. He thought that Star Wars was harmful to our society because it tells a moral story. It tells a story of black and white, of good and evil. It tells a classic part, it tells a story that's the classic monomyth of Western civilization. And you know how much they hate Western civilization. And so he wanted to do something that tore all of that apart and that harmed anybody who liked it, right? That made anyone who had once liked that story, people who fundamentally liked the mythology of the West, it's meant to call them stupid and to denigrate that whole mythology of the West. And yet you still go and pay $20 to see it because oh, there's a new droid there. Oh, look at the ships, and this is something only morons do, okay? You're a moron if you're doing this. Why are you giving money to people who utterly hate you, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, man. If you value these things, why would you, if you loved your dog, would you give money to someone who is going to, who's going to kick your dog for 2 hours, right? Would you be paying money for that, right? Wait, maybe they're wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. Would that change it? No, right? Like, it doesn't matter what the reason is. It doesn't. You're not getting what you want. You're hoping to get what you want, but you won't. You won't. You know that the next Star Wars movie isn't going to be suddenly a stunning revival of everything that was good and noble about Star Wars. No, it's going to be more of the same leftist SJW garbage meant to harm Star Wars. Right, and the only reason they can keep doing this is because you still gave them money. You despised the last movie and you still threw money at it. Some of you went to see it twice, right? Why? Because you have this, somebody on my Twitter feed called it nerd OCD, right? You have to get over that. All right, I saw Dave Rubin, who's a very smart guy as a rule, post that the next Star Wars movie is probably going to be so awful. I saw nothing in the trailer that in any way denied that it was going to be awful, but I'm still going to go watch it. Right? No, you have to stop watching it. You have to stop throwing money at people who hate you, and ideally start throwing money at people who like you. Right? And in the D&D field, this means that unfortunately you want to stop if you recognize that what's being done to D&D right now is bad, right? If the homogenization, the anti-diversity of the modern D&D community, in quotes, right, where they don't allow any diversity of thought, and where they even start enforcing things like settings, right, where any setting that doesn't, Jeremy Crawford recently had this interview about LGBT in Dungeons & Dragons. He said that the most important thing is that LGBT presence has to be in all D&D products, right? That's what he cares about. He doesn't care about the game. He doesn't care about the settings being good. He doesn't care about the adventures being good. He cares that in every single dungeon there's some kind of non-binary trans character, right? And I'm not saying this as someone who's anti-LGBT. I'm pro-LGBT. And in fact, I'm not against LGBT characters appearing in RPGs. I literally was the guy that put the first transgender character on the cover of a role-playing game, right? Me. I was the first one who did that, right? And I have absolutely no problem with that being done when it makes sense to do it, right? But this is not what they're saying. They're saying we have to put it everywhere, right? It has to be in all products. It has to be in all presence, because what matters to us is that we're using D&D as a weapon in the culture war. He didn't say that last bit out loud, but it's obvious in everything else he's saying. He cares about the culture war. He doesn't care about D&D. He certainly doesn't give a shit about you, right? But he cares about using D&D as a weapon, while at the same time harming the people who actually originally loved D&D, right? And creating this kind of community of mostly non-D&D players who still get some D&D merchandise and call themselves a community and post their pictures on Twitter, right? That's the D&D he wants, right? What D&D do you want? If it's not that, stop buying those books, right? Buy other stuff, right? There's the whole OSR out there. There's products that do not despise you, that made by people who don't despise you, but people who want the best for you, right? You should take a look at that. And that's the gist of what I'm saying here. And you're not harming D&D, just like you're not harming Star Wars or you're not harming comics by stopping to give money to people who are damaging Star Wars, or by not giving any more money to people who are damaging comics, right? I can't mention how many of you nerds I have seen bitterly complaining about all of this stuff, about Star Wars, about D&D, about the comics, about Watchmen, about everything, and yet you're still actually buying the stuff, right? So that's like, well, okay, but what? How do you know this about this guy? Well, I bought it. No, if you bought it, you're contributing to the very thing you're complaining about, right? Stop doing that. This should be completely obvious, right? Trying to politicize D&D creates this situation where all the settings are going to have to be, the same fundamental world with the same kind of values, the 2019 Seattle values. And that means you don't have that's actually an anti-diversity movement. This is why I'm against it. So I'm not going to encourage that kind of behavior in terms of the products that I'm going to support and buy. And it's not going to be the type of products I create. I'm going to create products that have a wide variety. I mean, if you look in my books, there is LGBT presence in my books. There are characters that are that are LGBT in my adventures, in my settings. But I'm not. The difference is that I'm not putting them in there as part of an organized plan to make war on some kind of conventional society that I despise, as part of this agenda to introduce this neo-Marxism into our culture, right? So if you don't, you don't have the idea that they're going to push at you is if you don't buy these products, it's because you support racism or sexism or homophobia. No, that's not true. You just don't support the games you like being turned into absolute garbage, right? That's what you don't support. You don't support the comic you loved being shat upon in streaming TV, or I don't know, is it HBO? I don't remember which one's doing Watchmen, right? Let's say on HBO. You don't want if not, HBO's probably going to find some comic to shit on anyways, right? So you don't want the comic you love being completely shat on HBO as a direct insult to you by people who are doing it specifically because they want to hurt you. They think you are a bad person for liking that kind of story, right? That kind of genre. And it's a genre they want to destroy, okay? Rian Johnson wanted to destroy Star Wars as a genre. That's what deconstruction means. Deconstruction doesn't mean I love this thing. It means I think this thing is a horrible thing that contributes to some kind of a systematic oppression in society. So I'm going to tear it apart and do it in a way that will be absolutely punitive to the people who liked it, okay? That's the thing that you're paying money to go for. I mean, Jesus. Look, I guess that's it for today. I'm just begging you guys to think about this, right? Don't go to the next Star Wars movie. Don't watch shows like Watchmen. Don't engage in anything that generates income for the people that do this. Because if you don't do these things, then sooner or later, corporations, which are bound by both capitalism and usually by their own statutes to actually have to make money, will realize that they're hemorrhaging money because of this, right? I mean, and Star Wars, for example, Disney knows Star Wars didn't do as well as it should have done, and I'm pretty sure they know that the Solo movie, for example, didn't do very well, in part because of the movie that came before. And I'm betting that they're going to experience a dip here, but it needs to be as much as possible for them to finally say, because there's this habit otherwise of always the people who make this garbage keep moving up. Like you may or may not like Mike Merles in Which is the Coast. Mike Merles is a kind of moderate Democrat, you know. The person who replaces him is going to be someone much worse than him, right? And they're going to have made some shit product, but they're going to end up being the next person in charge. And they're going to make you wish for the time when Mike Merles was in charge of Wizards of the Coast, right? So there's no way that this gets better until there's a prolonged period, until basically there's a prolonged period of these products, whatever they are, losing massive amounts of money, and a very clear indication that the reason why people aren't buying these products is because of the SJW agenda that's being pushed into these different products of entertainment, trying to transform that entertainment into propagandism, right? And so if you try to make them stop the propagandism, it's going to take not throwing money at them just out of nerd OCD complex, all right? So if you like this video, please share it everywhere. Post it all over the place on social media. Please subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. And keep an eye out anyways, because the way YouTube is these days, I mean, it's very hard to be sure that they're not going to unsubscribe you without asking. And besides that, I mean, the best thing you could possibly do for me is share my video, like my video, comment on my video. But if you want to help me out financially on top of that, I do have a Patreon and a PayPal link that you're going to see in the description below. But if instead of just giving me cash, because that's what you're doing if you're doing my Patreon or my PayPal. If you want to give me cash, hey, I'm not going to complain, right? I'm not a person that despises you. If you're watching this, in fact, no matter who you are, I don't despise you. Even if you're an SJW watching this, I don't hate you. I'm not going to make a product that's meant to hurt you, right? I'm going to make a product that's meant to be the best role-playing game I can possibly make it be. All right, and it's going to have a setting that's going to be as interesting and as good a setting as I have it within my power to make it. All right, and you're gonna and you're not going to see anything there that's going to be meant intentionally to harm you or to denigrate who you are, in the same way that SJWs made the things like the last Star Wars movie into something that was meant to directly denigrate fans of Star Wars. Okay, you're not going to have that from me. But so if you want to support me and get something back from it, check out my books. Check out Heirs of Indra. Heirs of Indra is a fantastic setting. And SJWs, in case you're wondering, not one white person in the whole game. So, you know, if that in some way affects your decision-making process, check it out. On the other hand, if you want a lot of white people in your game, you've got Lion and Dragon, right? Neither of them are really about doing anything other than playing in a world. And it's not particularly important to the setting whether in one of them there's a lot or another one there's few white people. But that seems to matter to you people for some reason. I guess because you're mostly racists, you know? I'm not a racist, so I don't really care. It just happens that Lion and Dragon is a role-playing game that is meant to be played in a fantasy version of medieval Europe, whereas Heirs of Indra is a game meant to be played in a fantasy version of India, of epic India from the Mahabharata. Both of them tap a lot into myths and legends, and that's stuff that is so powerful for the human spirit. So you should really check those out. But if you don't have the big bucks that I buy, big bucks, I mean, like, I think Lion and Dragon in the hardcover is like 26 or 28 bucks or something like that. But if you can't afford that, check out the RPG Pundit Presents series. It's a weekly product where I bring a different product each week, ranging from 99 cents to $4.99, of all OSR stuff that you can use for your old school D&D game or modify it for new school stuff. There's in each product there's either rules or an adventure or setting material or new magic or items or monsters or all kinds of stuff, all kinds of interesting things. The latest one I think is called Pocket Planes, and it's a shorter product that has got a bunch of tables and guidelines for creating smaller demi-planes that characters might stumble into in adventures or on the campaign. It was a kind of bonus product from an earlier one that I did a couple of weeks ago called Alternate Material Planes that has more tables about that. If planar stuff isn't your deal, though, you could check out Medieval Authentic Magical Stones, which is another recent one that is all about the magical properties of stones and minerals based on actual medieval sources from the Medieval Lapidaria, the books of the guide to stones that were made by different natural philosophers. And really cool stuff that can give a real medieval authentic flair to your campaign. It can make characters that have like natural philosophy or science as a skill in a medieval setting end up being able to do cool stuff, right? So check that out. Right, and if those don't interest you, well, I've got almost 100 of them now. I think I'm on 96 or 97. So you're going to find some product that's going to have something interesting for you, and it's not too expensive. It gives you something interesting, and it gives me what you could say a little tip for encouraging me to continue to make these videos. That's about everything for today. Once again, the best thing you can do, I'm so grateful if you buy my books and whatever. If you can't, though, just share this video. Currently smoking Lorenzetti egg plus Gawith's Navy Flake.